Okay, it is 3 o'clock on the dot Eastern, so we are going to get started because we have a lot to cover today. Again, my name is David Dodge. I am the executive editor of Gays with Kids. I use he and him pronouns. And so today we are concluding our foster care series. This is National Foster Care Awareness Month, so happy that to you all. If you've been following along, we've been doing a weekly webinar on the subject of foster care. That's the first several have done a deep dive into giving a general overview of the process. We did one that was specific to adopting or fostering older youth in the system, which was a pretty incredible look at that. We found out that there's over 40 to 50% of LGBTQ youth in the system that are preteens or teens that actually identify as queer. Last week, we did one that was specific to the resources that are available to LGBTQ foster parents. And then this week, we're going to do a deep dive into the process to try to humanize what this was like for two foster dads themselves. Jason Pierce and Eric Palavello, with the help of Extraordinary Families, a foster care agency based in LA. We're very excited to be joined by both of these foster dads, as well as Bonnie Sharpe. And we'll be turning it over to them in just a second to go a little bit deeper in all this. But so I also just like to start these in case this is your first exposure to one of our webinars as to who Gays with Kids is and why we've started to do this. So we are now 7 years old. We got started as a website and a social presence to try to just bring visibility to gay, bi, and trans men who are fathers or want to become fathers, mostly as a way to kind of inspire other people to realize that it's possible. We hear this all the time from people that, they may have always wanted to be a dad, but because they were queer or trans, that they didn't think that it was going to be something that was available to them. So we wanted to show that, there are many, many LGBTQ people out there that are becoming parents increasingly every year. And so that was kind of what we started as a show of visibility, just to show that it was possible. And despite the barriers put in front of us, that you can get past them. But over the years, as we've grown this, beautiful kind of community online, and it's gotten bigger every year, something we started to hear from the people that follow us is that visibility is great, and it really is, but we also need help navigating these very complicated processes that are available to queer people when they want to become parents. So as you know, or you wouldn't be on this webinar, for us, if you're interested in becoming a parent as a queer person, it doesn't just happen overnight. All of the processes available to us, whether it be foster care, surrogacy, adoption, co-parenting, they're complicated. They involve experts, often a lot of time and resources. So what we wanted to do is really kind of comb the country to figure out who these experts are around the country that have these resources that we lacked at the time. So we could bring you the best expertise possible to really understand, like from the minute that the idea of becoming a dad enters your mind down to the decision point of you're going to go with foster care and you're going to go with this agency or surrogacy and you're going to go with that fertility clinic. So we're really excited that we've been able to do this over the last year and a half, really start to partner with some of the best and the best. Extraordinary Families is very much one of these partners, one of our early partners. We're thrilled to have them with us here today. So if you were interested in other forms of fatherhood, we have a lot of different webinars that are going to be starting up over the summer. We now have a fully formed one on domestic infant adoption and also surrogacy. So those are going to be starting up again next month, and we'll continue repeating these foster care relevant webinars as well. So whatever your path is that you're interested in, we hope to have you covered. And please do go to our website, gayswithkids.com, where we're uploading all of these after they are recorded and uploaded, and to our YouTube page as well. So you can go back and look at these as much as you want. Okay, so for that, it's enough jammering on my point. So I just want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be getting to today. Again, the last 3 webinars we did on foster care were really kind of resource heavy and intensive. And I do really encourage you to go back and look at them. They go into a deep dive into the process of what it's like to become a foster dad and through the whole foster care system. So we're going to cover a good chunk of that again today with the help of Bonnie, but we're going to go through it a little bit more quickly than we have in the previous webinars, because again, today really is about learning from our other experts here, who are 2 foster dads who became foster dads, who have gone through the system, who are here to share their perspectives and also answer any questions that y'all might have for them. So again, we're joined by Bonnie Sharpe, who's the Quality Assurance Supervisor at Extraordinary Families, and Jason Pierce and Eric Palavello, who are foster dads with the help of Extraordinary Families. So this is, again, just to show their great logo. But with that, I'm going to actually just turn it right over to Bonnie so she can give us a good overview of the foster care system, a little bit about the process. But again, we're really going to reserve a good chunk of this towards the end so we can get into good dialogue with our foster dads that are here with us today. So without further ado, take it over, Bonnie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bonnie Sharpe, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Quality Assurance Manager, as David mentioned, for Extraordinary Families. We're a nonprofit foster care and adoption agency, and we serve all of Los Angeles County. And I've been with the agency for about 7 years, and in the field of child welfare, I think for 11 to 12 years, maybe. So just a brief overview of the foster care system, which just in general refers to the various services that are designed to ensure children's safety and well-being. There are more than 4,000 children in the foster care system nationally, and about 100,000 of them are waiting to be adopted. They enter foster care through no fault of their own because they've been abused, neglected, or abandoned, and they remain in care temporarily with their foster parents, also known as resource parents, or with relatives until they're able to safely reunify with birth parents, are adopted, or they age out of the foster care system and transition into adulthood. The primary goal of foster care is always to reunify children with their birth parents. And so resource parents must support reunification and the child's relationship to the birth family. And this requires a commitment to include a child as a member of your family, creating that sense of safety and belonging, whether the child remains in your care for just one day or lifelong. So next slide. So this is just to hopefully give you a quick overview of the process to become a parent through foster care. The first step, of course, is to find the right agency, one that best meets your needs as a family, and one that is not just accepting of LGBTQ individuals, but one that is inclusive, affirming, supportive, competent, and working with and serving LGBTQ families. But depending on where you live, finding an LGBTQ-friendly foster family and adoption agency or an FFA, it can be a challenge. So the All Children, All Families program of the Human Rights Campaign, they maintain a list of FFAs that are committed to welcoming and serving the LGBTQ community. And so this is a great place to start your research. And Extraordinary Families, for instance, has been recognized by this program as a leader in serving the LGBTQ community since 2009. And then once you've selected an agency, you'll be required to participate in some comprehensive training, some trauma-informed training to prepare you for the journey ahead so that you can best care for any child who joins your family. And that would be, again, whether it's temporary or long-term. And you'll begin the home study or family assessment process next, and I'll go over more about that in just a minute. But in general, the family assessment process, it allows us really to gain a deep understanding of your strengths and your parenting capacities so that we can best match you to a child or children in need. And our sort of mantra at Extraordinary Families is that we're looking for families for children, not children for families. Preparing your home too, it's a part of the family assessment process. So while each state likely has different points of emphasis when it comes to the home inspection, the primary emphasis for all states is always on safety. So your home is essentially becoming a licensed facility by the state, and you're required to meet and maintain some high level safety standards, pretty much above and beyond what you might do as just a general parent. And then once your family assessment and the home inspection have been completed and approved, you can expect to begin receiving calls regarding children in need of a safe home and family. And sometimes that can be as early as the same day of your approval or certification, but this timeline can vary depending on whether you opted to be matched to an older child who was perhaps already legally freed for adoption, or if you were open to providing care essentially on an emergency basis when a child was first entering foster care. But it's important to remember that when adopting for foster care, the goal is always to reunify the child or the children with their biological families whenever possible. So the role of the resource parent is to not only parent the child as you would your own, but it's also to support and help facilitate the reunification process. If, however, it's determined that the child cannot safely return to their families, then they may be adopted by the resource parents. So if your goal is to ultimately adopt from foster care, please do not be discouraged. You can and you will. It may or may not be your first child who joins your home, but if you commit to the process, you will one day welcome a child into your home and become that child's forever family. I think, adopting from foster care is no doubt challenging, but most everyone who's involved in this process will say that it's, one of the most, if not the most rewarding experiences of their life. And I'm sure Jason and Eric can attest to that when they share their story. Next slide. The role of the foster care agency. So part of the role of the FFA, it's essentially to walk alongside resource parents during this entire process. partnering with you, guiding you, supporting you, and advocating for you so that you can best care for any child who joins your home. And if you work with an FFA, they will provide you with all of your pre-service training. They'll conduct your family assessment. They'll help you prepare your home, assess and provide for your ongoing education. They'll join you with a child in need and support you in caring for that child through the reunification or the adoption process. The role of the FFA, however, is also to partner with the state or county, place, and agency. I think it's important to mention that, and to help oversee and monitor the safety and well-being of the child in your care, and help ensure that the services and supports are in place that the child needs to heal and thrive. And this includes making sure that the child maintains connections to a biological family as appropriate. Next slide. The home study. So going back to the home study or family assessment is it's what we call it now. It's important to note that all adoptive parents, regardless of their path to adoption, you have to complete this family assessment. The assessment should be a strength-based, affirming, and comprehensive psychosocial assessment that includes a review of things like your family background, your finances, your education, employment, relationships, social life, daily routines, parenting experiences, details about your home and community, your readiness and motivation to adopt, and the background and criminal clearances. It can be a lengthy process, and to some it may seem somewhat invasive, but just remember that the role of the FFA really is to truly partner with you in this process. And should any needs be identified along the way, your social worker will work with you and talk to you about those and identify a strategy to address those needs, and really just to best prepare and support you so you can be approved and eventually welcome a child into your home. The family assessment process really should be viewed more as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to explore with your social worker what your parenting capacities are. It's an opportunity to receive additional training and education about your journey ahead, which really can be a roller coaster, and to have some deep conversations about some potential outcomes, really so that you can plan for all possible events and hopefully become the strongest parent you can well before any child joins your home. Really, so hopefully that was enough of an overview. Without further ado, I wanted to, kick it over to Jason and Eric, who are really the true experts here with lived experiences through this process. I'm so excited to share this opportunity with them and share this platform, because I know all of those joining us today will really appreciate hearing their story.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. So I also I forgot to say at the beginning of this, that so if you have questions about anything that Bonnie just went over, and again, we normally take a good 30 minutes to go through what Bonnie just raced through, but we do want to spend most of today talking with our foster dads here. But so if you do have any questions about what Bonnie just went over, feel free to ask them now, or definitely go back and revisit some of the webinars that we've already done. And if you have any questions right now, you can use the Q&A function of your Zoom screen, or you can chat me privately if you prefer to do it that way. If you're joining us via Facebook Live, you can also ask questions there. And I'm asking them, and we'll start to ask them to our dads. But we'll spend the next good 20, 30 minutes here getting to know the Piers Pellavella family a little bit better. So why don't we just start very generally, if you could kind of, why don't you tell us how you two met, actually?
All right. We met everyone going out. We went at the Abbey.
Great.
On Sunday night. It was a Sunday. But there is a story behind it. But yes, we met there, and we haven't actually been apart since.
That's amazing. Believe it or not, you're not the first dads we profiled that met at the Abbey. So I don't think
17, will be 18 years this year.
18 years. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, and so can you talk a little bit about what or how quickly into your partnership did you start to talk about fatherhood, or did you always know that was something you wanted to do, or when did that kind of occur for you two?
Well, we always say I had no desire to have kids. Eric, I could tell, was a dad type, wanted to be a dad. He was always playing with nephews and nieces, and he was always doing things I did not do. And I saw that in him, and it started to kind of grow on me as well. And we went through a lot together over the first, it was like 10 years, I think, of our relationship. And we had my parents passed away when I was 29, and we went in a motorhome and drove across country together. And that's when we started having the conversation. And it kind of grew from there. It wasn't a conversation I ever thought of, but by the time we arrived back in California, we started looking into the process.
That was somewhere in New Mexico.
It was New Mexico when we determined that.
It was a long drive from Texas to New Mexico. It was our conversation. It was a long.
The desert can be very inspiring. I'm from Utah, so I totally get that. And so can you talk about, was it foster care right away? Did you explore some of your other options to parenthood, surrogacy, or adopting an infant, or what drew you to foster care as your preferred path?
I was always drawn to foster care. I mean, despite saying I didn't want to be a parent, if I ever did, I knew that was the way that I would want to go. I was always loved the Men's Child commercials, and Christine Divine, and,
religiously.
Yes, but we didn't really talk about other ways too much.
No, because we also keep in mind we wanted an older kid.
Oh yeah.
So that's that's like
the only way it's gonna happen.
The only way it's gonna happen. We wanted an older kid, based on our current situation at that point and what we think we can handle. I love babies, but spend a day with them is after that I'm like, take it back. But we realized we wanted older kids, so I think that's the only way we can actually make it happen.
Amazing. So I'm loving these family photos we have of you all, but I'm actually going to stop my screen share so I can bring all three of us on the same screen, so we can have a little bit more of a conversation here. But so I'm curious if you can just talk through. So that's great that you knew foster care was kind of the way that you wanted to go, and I think that is a really good point that if you are interested in providing a home for older children for any number of reasons, lack of diapers being maybe one of them, the foster care is a really incredible opportunity for that path. But so how did you start your research when you were, so you knew foster care, you knew that was the path you wanted to go. How did you start? Did you just Google foster care LA, or what was your, sorry, go ahead.
Completely blind. We just went into it and started researching everything, and Extraordinary Families just kept popping up. And I tried really, really hard to find somewhere else, thinking that there was going to be this magical place, and it ended up being the one that was in front of me for sure. I just wanted to make sure we were finding our home, and so we called them, I think, and said we were going to sign up in a few months. Right. And they were like, okay, well, call us in a few months. So then we finally got to the point where we were ready, and we reached out and we signed up for an orientation, and we figured we were going to be the novelty gay couple going into this orientation, and the only
I must say I wasn't 100% at that point yet. I mean, I'm going into this very, very slowly. Yeah, very slow, and
well, that was the great point of it. You knew it was a process too, right? So, and so we got there, and not only were we not the only gay couple, but I think there was like 2 straight couples and so many biracial couples as well, which is important to us as well. So we knew that we found our little safe space.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, I will say one of the more interesting parts about foster care, at least from, Gays with Kids, is national and we work globally, but this is such a hyper-local process and a hyper-local way to become a dad, which, is great in a lot of respects, because I think you really get to know a community like you're saying you did. But, I wish that we could say, anyone, no matter where you are, reach out to Extraordinary Families, because they are great. They are vetted, and, we're working with them for the same reasons that you all found that you decided to work with them. But so the first step is to try to find an accredited agency that's local to you. Either sometimes it's just within your state, other times it's within your county. So it can be, it can be a process to find someone that you're happy to work with, and unfortunately, it's not a national process. So can you talk about just what that it's like the first intake process was like? So when they brought you in, what was kind of the first conversation they had with you?
The first conversation was to come to an orientation and check it out.
Check it out.
And that's what we did. We had also, I should add, we were able to, through reading about them online, realize that they were a progressive agency, so that was important to us, and they were also at like the forefront of same-sex adoption. So just finding an agency, no matter where you are, that's knows your people and is going to take care of you and look out for you and is comfortable with you as well. Let us know we were at the right place. We went to the orientation. Like I said, it was funny. It was all the gay couples and like 2 straight couples in the back of the room, and we just talked about the process, and they're just laid it out. They were truthful.
They were very inspiring. I mean, the speaker on that first orientation was very, I think he stayed with me. It was a single gay dad that's positive.
Have HIV.
Yeah, HIV positive, and he has 2 kids, I think, and he just talked about, you know, how he handles the day to day, and I'm like, this guy can handle it. I mean, I think anyone can. So, you know, it gave me a little bit more assurance that, you know, this is the way to go.
Yeah. And that was the part. It was like right out the bat, like, you know, you can do it if your heart's in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is, I mean, it's such an important point that you're making just by telling this story, is that, you know, this is probably among the paths to parenthood, one of the most important ones to find an agency that is not just LGBT friendly, but very affirming, because there are, I think it's now 11 states across the country that have passed bills that make it legal for child welfare agencies to discriminate against LGBTQ people or single people, or they could discriminate based on HIV status, all these sorts of things that are horrific, but unfortunately legal. And there's a big federal case that's pending right now that may make that legal and more. But that doesn't mean that I'm pretty sure that there's still at least one agency anywhere you live in the country that is affirming and that will work with LGBTQ parents. So it is really important to you know, have that experience that you guys have, which was great, and not, you know, without doing your research first, walk into an agency that's less affirming or accepting or refuses to work with you. But so, Bonnie, could you just talk a little bit? Sorry, were you going to go ahead and add something, Jason?
Need that support as well during the process. So, you know, if you're not with someone who's not going to support you, it's going to be a difficult journey. Yeah,
absolutely. But so, Bonnie, can you just talk a little bit about the history of Extraordinary Families and why it's been important to be inclusive? And if that's, you know, is it by accident that these 2 walked in the door and it was mostly LGBTQ people and, you know, 2 straight couples in the back, or how often does that happen?
No, it's no accident. I would say that is probably one of our primary values. If you are not an LGBTQ affirming, supportive, inclusive individual, then you're not the right fit for our agency. And that's pretty much been a part of our agency since its inception, with our founder, Sylvia Fulgerman, just based on some of her personal life experiences and desire to support and work with this community. So it's always been a part of our agency, and it's just grown over time. And just become this, I mean, I think a really beautiful thing. And like I mentioned, we've been affiliated with the HRC All Children, Our Families program since 2009. We were one of the first to ever be recognized by this agency. And we're also among one of the first to be recognized as an innovator in serving the LGBTQ community. So yeah, it's just a huge piece of who we are.
I'm glad that you mentioned HRC's side a couple of times. So they've kind of done our work for us. Again, when we were trying to reach out and find inclusive agencies that we trust to work with, HRC, I mean, if you could actually talk a little bit about what they put agencies through in order to become certified, I think that could be helpful for people to understand that this isn't just, you don't just have a rainbow on your website, but there is a pretty intense process that they ask you to go through in order to show that you're affirming. Can you talk about what you have to show? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as quality assurance manager, that's one of the aspects that I oversee. And so HRC really, they deep dive into everything that your agency does. They look at your policies and your procedures. They look at your websites and social media. I mean, they look at everything that you're doing, and they review everything. They provide some feedback. You demonstrate to them areas in which you are growing and ways in which you're being innovative and serving LGBTQ youth and families. And it is a lengthy process, and you go through it every single year, and you're kind of just being assessed as if you were being accredited. Yeah, I don't really know how else to explain it, but it's not an accreditation program, but it really is like you're being accredited. Right. And it's a great process, and they're so supportive. They've been wonderful to work with. I've enjoyed every aspect of it.
That's great. So, I mean, again, that's where, we direct people first. We work with a handful of agencies that work in Seattle and LA. And unfortunately, we aren't working in every county in the country. But so for places that we do not have direct representation, that's the first place we send people. So it's important for people to go check out their site, which I can drop into the chat in just a second. So I want to talk a little bit about what, for me, it seems to be like the most terrifying part of the process for most people when I talk to them about this, which is the home study. People tend to think it's very critical and invasive, like you were saying, Bonnie. But most of the time, the dads that I know that have gone through it end up saying that it's actually a very rewarding and interesting process, and something that maybe every parent should go through, regardless of how they become one. But so I'm wondering if you two could talk just first about what that was like going through the home study and the additional training and resources that you found through the process, and what that was like for you.
Sure, I think we learned a lot about each other, certainly.
Everything.
It was like you just said, it was everyone should go through it. Every parent should go through it. It was eye-opening. We learned a lot about ourselves. I, in particular, have one example was because I had lost my parents when I was in my 20s, I thought that was like a plus for me because I was going to be able to relate to this child. And it turned out like, no, that's a negative. We need to study your issues. Have you gotten help for that yet? Are you through it? Are you mourned? Have you grieved properly? Are you going to reflect that on your child? And I was like, oh, wow, no, I didn't realize that wasn't a positive necessarily. It was this is about the child. It's not about you. So I definitely learned that and put that in my back of my head. And
then, so during the process as well. So we, as far as picking a race, which is a very sensitive topic for us, but we thought at one point that, okay, so maybe we'll have an Asian kid or a white kid that could make it a little bit more normalized as far as, visually. But during the process, we learned that it's actually reversed. The kid may have some issues, either leaning towards J the white kid will have some issues.
Or resentment. Yeah, there were just things you never even think of coming out.
So at that point, we're like, okay, so things that you learn through the process and
about each other. I mean, just having to be interviewed separately and answer questions, see what each other answered. But it's healthy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm wondering, Bonnie, if you could just talk a little bit more about how that process works and how you kind of support people through it. Just a little bit more and kind of like contextualize it first a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, David. A lot of parents come to us really dreading this family assessment, but I like to frame it as an opportunity. It really is an opportunity for you, as Jason and Eric explained, to just really assess what your strengths and your needs are. And we're there to help you assess those strengths and needs. We want to approve you. We want you to be parents. There's 400,000 children in foster care, 100,000 of them need families. So we're really looking for ways to partner with you and rule you in as parents and not select you out. It is lengthy. We do ask a lot of questions, and we do ask a lot of very personal questions, but it's all about finding families for children.
It's great. So something else I've heard through foster care experts and also foster care parents is that it's really important. And this, again, I think is just some like common sense for any parent. It maybe kind of happens a little bit naturally that way, but to find kind of a community of support that can help you through this process as foster parents, and to make sure that you're getting the support you need as well, to make sure that you're providing the best home possible. So, and I know this is something that Extraordinary Families and good foster care agencies do in helping kind of help people think through building up that community and figuring out where it comes from and who to reach out to, and to be very intentional about it, not to just assume it'll be there. So I'm wondering if you could both talk about what that was like building that community, or where you found it, how your community kind of responded to your decision to do this. But why don't we start with you, Jason and Eric, about you're laughing. I'm interested to hear what you're
One of the things that most valuable, that it was an exercise we did with Extraordinary Families, and it wasn't during the home study, it was during a class. Yeah. But we had a cup, and there are all these beads of different colors on the table. And we were asked questions like, what ethnicity is your barber? Yeah. And you would put either the whatever. Then what's the star of your favorite TV show? Well, who are your neighbors? Who is your doctor? And so you would get to see how diverse your cup was. And we were thankful that ours was fairly diverse, but you could definitely see there were people that didn't have that diversity.
One color,
single colored, maybe one or two things in them. So that was pretty eye-opening to see that that's, a reality. You have to think these things through, because you are changing, and you do want your child to be able to reflect and see people like themselves and representation in your own life.
So finding a community.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we liked about being with Extraordinary Families is that during the meetings, they had us sign everyone from the meeting, sign your name and address and phone number. So for all other couples that after this class is ended, you can either reach out and find out, what your connection is, or perhaps, push through when you have kids together. So during that process, we don't know any one of those people, but I guess we picked them based on location.
Yeah, close to us.
They're close to us, and I think what age range were they hoping for the kids. So we were pre-planning, and we ended up hanging out with, I think, 6 or 7 other
there were 3 couples. No, 3 couples really religiously that we hung out with.
Yes.
And that was so important. We're still close with them today. We don't hang out quite as much as we used to. And in the beginning, we would do once a month, outings. And I think that's important. We were talking about this the other day, not only for you, because nobody else knows what you're going through, but also to just to start to understand your child a little bit before you're out in the real world, so to speak, with people who understand what's going on there.
Safe space for them.
It's not, you're still getting to know each other's quirks, and this is happening, and those can happen out in public, and you're like, oh my gosh. But in that safe space where people know what's going on, it's like, oh, okay, I can take care of this here. They understand what I'm going through, because it can be very lonely.
So I'd love to hear, Bonnie, from the agency perspective, how is this something that you prepare dads for, to be thinking about community and the support that they'll need? And again, this is something I think any parent would benefit from, but at least foster parents have the benefit of having this be kind of a part of the process for them, is to think this through, right?
Absolutely. It's definitely a part of the home study process. It's, one of the areas that we really look into. We ask families, who is your support system? What is your relationship like to extended family members? Who can be there for you when XYZ happens? Especially now with COVID and the all sorts of uncertainties in our world right now. You really need to have that support system because, and like you said, David, just as a parent in general, you need that support system. Parenting is very challenging. And I think parenting through foster care is even more so challenging, and it can be isolating, as Jason and Eric had mentioned. You really need to have someone on your team who knows what you're going through. That's in part why we have now this ambassador program, and we're linking our parents with mentors, with other resource parents who have lived these experiences and can really help guide parents along this process. Because we, as social workers, can only do so much, and we're only going to be here for a certain amount of time. At some point, you will adopt and you will move on. Of course, we're always happy to hear from you, but you need to have those lifelong connections to continue supporting you. Because parenting is, it doesn't end when the child's 18.
That's exactly right.
I'm always reaching out to extraordinary families still 10 years later. I'm like, hey, what's this happened? What do I do?
That's very much what my experience. It seems to be the dads that have worked with extraordinary families and the other agencies we work with. It's a lifelong connection, which I think is fantastic. And again, not something you get, most parents when they become parents via other means. I think that's really fantastic. So we have a great question coming in from our Facebook Live feed. Someone that is curious. So you had mentioned that you knew going into this that you wanted to adopt an older kid, and it sounds like you had some conversations about race going into it beforehand too. So and Bonnie, I'll love your perspective on this as well. But so how did you two, because these can obviously be sensitive questions, and I think people can feel a lot of different ways about their preferences, right? When they go into this and feel maybe guilt about it in some ways, or to, but so how did you go through making sure that you're having an honest assessment with yourselves? Because, something that I hear from foster care experts all the time is it's much worse to go into this system, with a completely open book and then end up with a placement that's going to fail, right? So it's important to be honest about your needs going into this and what you're looking for in terms of building your family. So could you talk about how you did that? And again, if you could talk a little bit more about how that may have changed as you went deeper into the process.
Well, the first conversations we were having were really like, oh, well, again, in New Mexico, so why don't we adopt a Native American child? And it turns out that's not so easy to do. So we decided that we would have a further conversation, and we started talking about our own races and then we realized, oh, that could be a thing, I guess, where there's resentment or attachment, or we just didn't want that to become an issue. And we already looked so different from each other.
So why not?
So we just figured, we're here for really whatever. It wasn't that we have to have this. But we were saying, we see this as being a strong possibility for us and a fit that we think would work for us. And so we went into it that way. But I don't recall, I feel like we had several calls before we actually said yes, and none of them had to do with race at all. They all had to do with the situation. I don't even remember the race of the other children, to be honest, what they were. So it was more just when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you're hearing these stories and having to be truthful about what you're capable of, and race just becomes secondary.
Yeah. So I'm glad you guys said to be honest, because I think it's all about just being honest. It's what you can handle. You can. I said this to all my friends. Like, when we were in this process, we felt guilty because we said no to
7
kids before we had Justin and Camille. But during the process, you learn to really be honest about yourself, because this is going to be your life. So it's okay to be selfish and say, okay, this is what I can handle and this is what I can't. So as far as race goes, it doesn't. We just ended up with the boys. It was, I think for us, it was a perfect fit. It was something that we were hoping to have as a family. It's like a picture in our minds to have Justin and Camille, an athletic kid and an artist, and we were just there along for the ride. I think, being a different race made it a lot more interesting. I think we go out to places and we just love how people look at us, because they can't, like, what's going on in this situation, and we get positive from that. And we talk to people based on, wherever we go sometimes, and it's always a positive thing. And that's a conversation starter.
We flipped it into a positive as well too for the boys, because we're able to just be like, right off the bat, we're different. Like, we're all different. There's no hiding that, right? So this is us now. This is our story, and look at how are we going to make it work.
Right. No, I think, race is just one facet of many different reasons that, that people need to, well, actually, Bonnie, why don't you walk us through, like, what are some of the things that you help people try to think through before they get into the system? Because again, you can be very upfront with kind of the situation that you're comfortable with, or think that your household will be best suited to serve. So how do you help people kind of wrestle with those questions and decide?
Well, I think Jason and Eric actually already talked about one of them. It's that exercise, that marble exercise, because it helps you really think about who do you have, who is actually in your community, in your day-to-day life. If it turns out that you only interact with a certain race every day, all day, and have very little interaction with other races, ethnicities, or other cultures, then you may not be the right fit for children of color, and or children of varying ethnicities and backgrounds and whatnot. So that's kind of like the introduction to this, and it really inspires, I think, parents to think deeply about what they actually can do and how they actually can support a child. It's not going to be a good fit. And I think, so let me go back. So when we're going through the home study process, we're assessing the family and what we believe they can handle. And so we're not going to call you and give you, hey, we have XYZ child, and we don't think you're actually going to be able to parent this child, and you're not going to be successful, but we're going to call you anyway. So no, we're not going to make those calls. We're going to call you with children that we think really will potentially fit within your home, and that you actually have the strengths to parent. And so maybe, Jason, maybe that's why when you got those calls, race really wasn't a factor for you, because you're getting calls that we truly felt was going to be a good match for you. I don't know if I'm actually answering this question. I went on a tangent.
That is what's so great to hear, is that it seems like you prepared Eric and Jason enough, or that you prepared yourselves well enough to feel comfortable saying no when it wasn't a correct match, right? I think that is what's so crucial to this, is that people feel empowered to do that and to know what's best for them. Maybe you're not comfortable having a sibling group at your home, or whatever the reason is. So yes, I think that's really fantastic. So this next question is a great one, and it's from someone on our Facebook feed wondering how much this all costs. So this is, I think, one of the huge benefits of foster care, especially compared to some of our other paths to parenthood available to queer men. Domestic infant adoption and surrogacy are both incredibly expensive. There are ways to offset it and make it affordable, and if that's how you want to build your family, that's there. We can go into that in other webinars. There's plenty of resources to help out. But foster care is the one path that is free to low cost and comes with resources and support financially. For many years. So if you could talk, Bonnie, just a little bit about what kind of support foster care parents can expect, and if there are any kind of costs that maybe people should be thinking through. And then I'd love to hear Eric and Jason just what it's been like to have that be part of the process.
Yeah, so it's definitely one of the huge benefits adopting through foster care. It really doesn't cost much of anything. You're going to have some incidental fees. You may have some fees to pay for instance, like live scans. I think in some states, perhaps you have to pay for the home study or something to that effect. But it really is going to be maybe a couple hundred to 1,000 or so, compared to maybe 20,000 to 50,000 when you go some other paths. So it definitely is cost effective for families. And that's great because then it allows a whole a range of families to come to us from all different backgrounds to parent children who are in need. You also have, Medi-Cal, Medicaid for children in care up until 18, I think, and as depending upon the child's circumstance, it can go up to 21 or 26, I think. There's various grants and vouchers available for children in care to attend college or vocational programs. There's, I think a whole host of benefits are available to families who adopt through foster care that you're not going to find when you choose some other path through to adopt.
Yes, and so again, it doesn't sound like that was like a primary driver of your reasons, Eric and Jason. But can you just talk a little bit about what that has meant, I guess, to not have the cost of some of these other paths hanging over you, or to have the resources and support that come with the foster care system?
I can't imagine having those costs because it's already so expensive anyway. Just not that part, not the adoption. But I mean, obviously, once you're, how about a family, you're feeding and growing boys and sports and piano lessons, and I don't know what I did with all that money before. But having the resources does help, particularly during the foster process, like while you're still fostering, it's helpful just to make sure everything's up to par and getting what you need to get. I mean, there are requirements. You have to, obviously clothe them. And so you're buying all new clothes from scratch, and you always have to buy new clothes. So there's always buying new clothes. And it just, it helps the transition period for you to be able to transition financially as well. And that'd be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we probably have time for one last question, which again, this is one we get a lot. I think it's a really great one, which is, so I think for me, it's impossible to learn about the foster care system, the 400,000 kids that are in it, and what they've gone through, and not be moved in some way to try to help, I think, in my experience. And so I think the more, people that are on this that are just now learning about it, but may not be quite ready to take the plunge. It is obviously a big commitment. Like you said, parenthood isn't something that ends at 18, and fostering really isn't either, even if you're not looking to create a forever family through this process. But Bonnie, what are some other ways that people could support the kids in foster care short of becoming a foster parent themselves? Or if, maybe they're trying to figure it out if it is right for them? Are there ways that people can kind of like dip a toe or what are ways for people to explore short of just jumping right in?
Yeah, there's some, at least at Extraordinary Families, and I'm sure plenty of FFAs out there offer mentoring programs where you could sign up to mentor youth in foster care. That's a really great way. I mean, you're still making a commitment to a youth in foster care, but it's not quite the commitment as you would be taking a child into your home lifelong. So definitely there's mentoring is always available. You can also just volunteer for an FFA and start to get a feel for what the work and the service that FFAs do. And it could be as simple as, for instance, we always have our holiday annual party, and some volunteers come and they help wrap gifts for children in care, and they help gather gifts for children in care. And of course, there's always donate. You can donate to various FFAs to help ultimately care for these kids in care.
Great. Yeah, and so I'll rephrase that question a little differently for you and for Eric and Jason. But so what would you, for someone that's watching right now that's, again, trying to think about it, how would you help, or what kind of advice would you give people to help them figure out if foster care is the right path for them? And what kind of next step would you tell them to take after watching this wonderful webinar?
You know, I think we're a classic couple that we kind of liked knowing that there was a process, and that if we needed to tap out at any time, we could tap out without really hurting anyone. That we were, you know, had the orientation, had the classes, had the home study. There's a process before you're actually getting to the talk of children. So that allowed us to just kind of go at our speed and feel like we were going at our speed. And, you know, we went through it and we continued on the path. We didn't stop, but we always knew that if we needed to, or if we wanted to, we could, and we continued to have conversations about that as we went. So, you know, if you're even curious about it, just getting your feet wet and going to an orientation or learning about it, or even starting the process, you know, you don't, even if you get to the end of it, you can still remain certified, right, for a little while, and you don't have to jump. So
in my sorry, no, please go ahead.
So just to add to that, I think if you're even just thinking about this and you have some sort of a time, you know, just spend a little bit more and, you know, start with the process, because I think for me especially, I went in this situation not really 100%, and going through the process and learning more about myself and our relationship and what we are capable of, and just really making sure that I can handle it throughout the whole process gave me the chance to say, okay, I guess this is it. Because just like what Jay said, you know, throughout the process, it's one of the things that we loved about it is because we can still tap out, and that gave me some, I don't know, a cushion. Yes. So if you're like in the fence, you know, you can always just start the process and figure it out for yourself. You're not wasting any time, because throughout the process you learn a lot about this and about yourself. And so it's just, I think it's a win-win situation, and it's good karma. So I think I'll end it at that.
Absolutely. Well, so we're at the end of our 45 minutes. I can't thank you all enough. We have been joined by Jason Pierce and Eric Palavello and Bonnie Sharpe of Extraordinary Families. So I will just say that, again, we are going to relaunch our webinar series on adoption and domestic infant adoption, and also surrogacy, starting next month. We'll be doing these foster care related ones again. So please do email us at dads@gateswithkids.com if we didn't get to your question, or if you have further questions for any of our panelists or for us. We're very excited to be offering these, and, you know, very happy that we've been able to do 4 of these webinars during Foster Care Awareness Month this May. So please do check out all the resources on gateswithkids.com. If you haven't yet, check out our YouTube page, get in touch with Extraordinary Families if you're in the LA area. And if you have any other further questions for any of us, please do reach out. We hope to see you on future webinars. Thank you all again so much. And we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Bye.